There we go. I think we're live now. Let me just check to make sure this is working. Let's see here. Okay. I think everything is working, so I'm just going to give this a minute. Hey, Adam. Adam, you can see and hear me okay? Oh, hi. I just want to make sure everything's working and I'm not talking to myself right now. Yeah. Oh. Last time I did this, because I'm streaming through StreamYard right now, and with StreamYard, you have to enter the stream, enter the studio, but then you have to click another button to actually go live. And I always forget that you have to click a second button. So last time I sat here for like 3 minutes talking to myself, and I was texting my husband while I was doing it. And he was like, no one can see you yet. So lesson learned. Okay, Charisse is in the house. Now it's a party. All right, so let's get started then. So I just do this every now and then. People come and you can put your questions in the chat and I just go right down the line and answer them. Anything and everything freelancing is fair game. Yeah, I went almost 10 minutes once. You might have the record. This is awesome. Some familiar names in here. Lots of writers. That's great. So yeah, you can ask anything about LinkedIn, landing clients, setting rates, setting boundaries, anything at all. And I will do my best to answer them just based on my own experience. And if I don't have an answer, I will at least try to point you in the right direction. So yeah, I'll be here for about an hour and let it rip. Any questions, just drop them in the chat. Or anything you've learned recently, any insight into, building your own freelancing business, anything at all. This is very casual, laid back. We're just here to shoot the breeze. And I'm just going to sit here and be awkward while you guys do that. Hey, Erin. Any and all questions are fair game. Or you could tell me about your week. I had a funky week. I don't know if it's still that we're kind of like in winter mode or what, but like ever since the holidays, I feel like I took a break for the holidays and I'm still not back. Adam said, lesson number 1, don't give freebies out. Oh, my friend, what did you do for free? Did you give someone a free sample of your work or a free trial? We can talk about that. That's a good one. I did the same thing. That's how I learned. If you want to provide more details, go ahead. Okay. Woo, questions coming in. This is good. So first, yeah, don't give freebies out. So if you're new here, which I don't think any of you are, but anywho, I'm a writer. Some of you are writers. In the very, very beginning, when I was first building my business, I provided free audits to potential clients, and I would spend hours on these things. And I had like a slideshow presentation and the whole 9 yards. And I was like, this is great. No one's going to be able to resist this. Well, they all resisted it. I didn't close a single client. So I stopped doing anything for free. Free samples, don't do them. If they want to see previous, work that I've published, I have at this point, honestly, probably thousands of articles I've written. I think I've written that much. It's just been a long time. So you can see that. And I always offer a paid test assignment or a paid audit. But yeah, free stuff. And even if like the tricky part with that is we're coming from a good place. We are trying to provide value and we're trying to get their attention. But the thing is, the kinds of clients that you attract with free stuff aren't the kinds of clients you want to work with, because they're typically not the ones who once you do the freebie, whatever it is, and then you're like, okay. And if they say, let's move forward, this is great. When you go to tell them your rates, they're going to be like, that's a bit pricey. So unfortunately, just doesn't, in my experience, it's never worked out. Adam said he did 2 freebies and then she paid for the third. Okay, well, that's better than nothing, but you should always get paid. Your time is valuable. What do you do when a client doesn't hand you a 1099 despite recording over $38 for the year? Ooh. That has happened to me before. I mean, okay, so I have to this disclaimer, not a tax professional, but all I know is that at the end of the day, it's on us to report our income. So the best we can do is report how much we make, and if they kind of drop the ball on handing forms, at least you know, and you pay taxes income. Really odd that they didn't though, because it's in their best, and because our clients typically deduct us as a business expense, or a portion of our rates. That's a tax benefit for them as well. Is it just me or is she Woody, there's an echo? Oh no, there's an echo. Shoveling like a baseball announcer. Oh, okay, hold on. Don't go anywhere. How about now? That should have been it. You still can't hear me? Are we back? Everyone can hear? Okay. I'm sorry about that. This mic must be glitching because that happened to me. I tried to record something earlier this week and I was getting a feedback, whatever they call it. There was an echo. Sorry about that. Okay. Let me scroll back. So sorry about that. Let me scroll back. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so yeah, we were talking about taxes. Yeah, I know that's not perfect advice because I mean, we can't force our clients to send us those forms, but to my knowledge, if you're keeping track of your income so that you can, report it and pay the taxes on it, you're covered. They might not be, but I think you should be okay. Let's see here. I forgot I can do this. Look at that. Okay. Do you see tools like ChatGPT replacing some freelancers in the near future? I have a video I'm going to be recording about this. So yes and no. And again, for context, I'm a writer, so this directly impacts my line of work, certainly. And in the beginning, first I was panicking a little bit because I thought, oh my God, we're definitely going to be replaced. But then I tested these tools out for myself, and this was a little while ago. They were okay. They were impressive for what they are, but I thought this, I've been writing a long time, so I feel very comfortable saying my writing is very good. And the AI that I was using at the time didn't like it was good, but it sounded like very elementary, very basic. It sounded like a machine wrote it. And I thought, okay, this might be able to replace very green writers, very inexperienced writers, but this does not sound like my work. And at the time, like it couldn't research and cite articles like the sources. It can't optimize your work. It didn't have all of those nuances that you get when it's a human being writing it. And then it did. And it very quickly got a lot better. So I did for, a little bit, I was like, oh, this is going to be really bad for us. But there's a few things to consider there. First of all, we're not going to stop it. We can't control it. So sitting here and panicking about it, I know it's hard not to, but that doesn't serve us. It's not going to make anything better. All you're doing is like torturing yourself. And also, that being said, I don't think it's going to completely replace all of us. There are a few reasons why. It's going to be really, even with how sophisticated it's becoming, it's still not a human being. Nothing like it, I'm not saying it's not possible in the future, but I don't think we're at that place where technology can replace a human being. Also, I think that there are like legal factors to consider. So if it makes us feel any better, there are websites that are already being penalized. They're coming under scrutiny for for publishing a lot of content that was built by AI. There's kind of like an issue of ethics there and transparency. And also, especially when it comes to things that are being monetized, stuff gets even the lines blur a lot. So for instance, there was a story I read recently about this guy who used AI to write, I think, a children's book. And he sold it on Amazon, I think, and it blew up. He sold a ton of copies. Then people found out it was written by AI, and that specific AI tool had come under fire before for stealing other creators' work in order to generate the content. That's how AI works. It learns by combing through stuff that's already online and making itself more sophisticated by consuming that content. So I think it's a much bigger discussion than are we going to be replaced? Honestly, at this point, I'm not allowing myself to worry about it. I think it's a lot more complicated than we think it is. I think it's the shiny new toy that everybody's running to, kind of like Bitcoin. I do think it could very easily backfire. In fact, it's already backfiring for some people. Now, I do believe that there are some really good applications of AI. Some people are talking about how to layer AI on top of their chatbots on their website to improve that experience for their users. In that case, I don't know that it would be replacing a human being. It would just be making existing technology smarter. So I think it's a very multifaceted conversation. I do not think it's going to replace all of us. I think we got to like roll with the punches and keep up with the technology, and remember that I think we could do it better than machines. So that's my 2 cents. What mistakes did you make that taught you valuable lessons? I love this. Let's see. I undercharged. It is embarrassing. I won't even tell you what I used to charge. It is that embarrassing. And no boundaries. And it was my own fault. I let my clients walk all over me in the past. And that's not to say they were doing it maliciously. For the most part, my experiences with clients, they've been super nice. There's a few in there that weren't, but that's people. But I made myself too available. I was too eager. I was a people pleaser. And so for example, when a client would reach out, whether it's by email, text, which I don't recommend you do, I would respond right away. So they got used to that level, that kind of service. And then I had to go and undo all of that. And it's really hard to undo once you set that expectation. Um, Boundaries, you have to have them. And especially if you're, so I'm 34, I've been doing this now, I've been freelancing for like 14 years, I think. And I've had my business as an LLC. I've had that for about 5 years. So if you're younger than me and you're kind of like just getting going, don't make the mistake I did. Set boundaries from the beginning. Do yourself a favor. If you wait as long as I did, it's just going to get harder. It's not impossible. You can undo anything, but you'll save yourself a lot of headaches if you're just doing this from the beginning. Michael says, always know your worth. Absolutely. Let's see here. I'm just catching up on comments. Give me 1 second. This is where we were having audio issues. Okay. Let's see here. One question is, what about recommendations on LinkedIn? Are you talking about like how to get recommendations? Can you tell me if that's what you mean? I'll talk about that for a minute while you're giving me more, just give me a little more context in the chat. But yeah, freelancers, you can absolutely ask for recommendations. And I also want to point out here, if you've never had a client, okay, yes, this is what you're talking about. Those are good. And, you know, recommendations that you get on LinkedIn, you can also use those as testimonials on your website. If you've never had a client or you've had very few clients, that's okay. You can get a recommendation from anybody who knows you in a professional capacity. So if you have a former coworker, ideally a former like boss, someone you reported to, a manager, a director, whatever, you can go to them and say, you know, I'm trying to build out my testimonials and my LinkedIn profile. Would you be willing to give me a testimonial or a recommendation? Don't ask for it from someone you're not willing to give it to. That's my rule. And yeah, and if there's any like specific details you want them to point out, you can gently request that. Otherwise, just let them write one for you. Yeah, you can even take the testimonials, like 1 or 2 of them, and put them in your about section. I think I have a few testimonials at the end of my about section. It's like not social, well, kind of social proof. I always say what other people say about us and about our companies is way more impactful than what we say about ourselves. So if you can get other people to vouch for you, that's really good. Don't just ask your friends to do it. You will have clients who go poking around. So just make sure they're legit. Michael says, me too, and I got a bit triggered on my last show. Every time something goes wrong on one of these, I used to panic. I would immediately go into panic mode because it's like you're on the spot, you know, you're in this moment, something's going wrong, and I will literally start sweating through my shirt. I have to tell myself, everything's okay, calm down. So thank you for being patient with that little glitch. I certainly panicked a lot at first. I think you're talking about AI. Yeah, you know, don't panic if for no other reason than we cannot stop it. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. Continue honing your craft, whatever that is, writing, graphic design, web design, whatever, and continue to strive to provide the best service you can. And that's how you're going to have clients who stick with you. And if you're starting to hear whispers from people that you work with that they might be considering eliminating you in lieu of AI, you can always point back to the discussion about the potential repercussions. I know this hasn't happened, but if it were to, if I had a client come to me and say, well, AI could do this, like, number one, no. And number two, do you really want to risk filling your website with a bunch of content generated by AI? Because Google, there is already software being developed that can pick out AI generated content. And the last I read, which is this week, it doesn't work very well yet, but it will. So if a client wants to put a bunch of artificially created content on their website and hope that Google isn't going to see it, they are. And also, I want to point out for the writers out there, you might be familiar with something called spinning. You can take a piece of content someone else wrote and you can put it in a tool that will spin it. And that tool will rearrange the sentences just enough that that piece of content won't get flagged for plagiarism. Google's webmaster guidelines very explicitly call out artificially generated content. That covers spinning articles and it also covers AI. So it's not even really allowed in the search engine's eyes. So that's why it's, it's a very, very, well, I don't even think it's a gray area. It's going to be a gray area because AI is becoming so popular. I certainly wouldn't chance it. I don't use it. I have a content agency. We churn out blogs every day. I would not use it. What would you recommend for new online freelance service providers? A minimum viable offer or straight to a 3-month offer? Can you follow up in the chat with what kind of freelancer you are? Because that will affect my answer, but I would say neither. I would say try to get people on monthly plans. And the reason for that is because like typically when I work with freelancers, the goal is to give them as much stability and predictability with their income as possible. I know it might be easier to find one-off projects. And like if you need quick cash, if you really need money, I wouldn't be like, oh, don't take that project. But the thing is, when you build a freelancing business off of one-off projects, you are constantly hustling, trying to find new work. That becomes like part of your job, like too big of a part. Whereas as an example, I've got clients and I produce the same amount of content for them every single month. And I charge them usually the same thing every single month. So I always have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to make. They know what they're going to spend. And it reduces friction. That being said, there are some types of freelancers who I know that type of pricing structure isn't as common. For instance, web developers, web designers. Very often you'll be designing a website. It'll be a huge project and it's kind of like a one-time thing. When I work with web designers, I still encourage them, if they can, build a website. It's going to be a one-time quick injection of cash. But if you can, get that client on a monthly like maintenance plan where, even if it's a much lower amount, it's still recurring income. The more you can do that, the better. Okay, so a marketing consultant. Yeah, I would, well, being a consultant's a little different because you're not selling a service, you're selling knowledge. So consultants go and teach businesses or teach people how to do things. You're selling knowledge. But I could still argue that, especially with marketing, you can get them on some sort of monthly plan because marketing platforms change daily. But if you feel like you need some kind of time constraint and you want to ask people to commit to 3 months to start, give it a shot. Just bear in mind that you're going to have money coming and going a lot more. Your income's going to do this a lot more. Give me 1 second. Just give me 1 moment. I'm catching up on everything. AI can never create or replace human experiences. I agree. I've seen Chat AI and Surfer get articles completely wrong. Yeah, that's another thing. When I was playing around with this, I think it was OpenAI. And again, a lot of it comes down to the prompts you give it. Like you tell it, write an article about blah, blah, blah. You have to learn how to give it the right prompts and it will give you more refined content. But that's another thing. Like First thing I did was I ran it through a plagiarism checker. It got flagged for a ton of plagiarism. But also, when I'm writing something and I'm writing it from scratch, I fact check it myself. I know it's accurate because I check it myself. So having a tool, having a machine write it for me, if I have to go back through and fact check it anyway, I'd rather just write it myself from the beginning and have that peace of mind. Eventually, the selling point will be human customer service. Hi, Karina. Yeah, I think, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's what we were talking about a minute ago. I could see AI taking off with customer service. I still think, though, it would need to get a lot more refined because, like on Amazon, if I'm trying to return something on Amazon and they put you through that painful process where you have to go through all these steps and they have the automated responses in the chat. And I will still, from the get go, I will just sit there and type representative, because I want to talk to a human. And that's because sometimes technology just doesn't cut it. This is a good one. At what point in the journey should you look into applying for an LLC? Okay. To repeat my disclaimer from earlier, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tax person. This is what I was told. And don't quote me on the number because I can't remember the exact number, but back in 2017, it was early 2017, I think, my accountant had told me there's no point in registering your business as an LLC until you're consistently making, and this is the part I'm not sure of, it was like $4,000 or $5,000 a month, bearing in mind I'm in the US, or in Nevada. So I waited until I got to that point, and then I registered. And I registered as an LLC, taxed as an S corp because of the taxes work differently. There's like a tipping point where it does become advantageous to have an LLC. So I would talk to a tax professional, or maybe even a lawyer in your area, because every state's a little different. But that's the advice that I was given. Because also bear in mind, it's an expense. Once you register, you have a city business license, you have a state business license. I pay the city of Las Vegas and the state of Nevada to have my license. So, it's not like some astronomical amount, but it's money. So if you're kind of still kicking things off and getting your business going, I do not believe that to be a priority, in my opinion. So I think we're going back to AI here. The thing is that a business will do what they can to get as much as possible while spending as little as possible. It's just good business. Be confident and know what you bring to the table. That's a great way to look at it. Clients who are looking to cut corners and get things for as cheap as possible, what I always tell my freelancers that I work with, you are not cheap. Do you want to be the cheapest person in the room? I don't. I imagine myself, whenever I start to like imposter syndrome sets in and I start to second guess my rates, I imagine myself in a room of freelancers like me, and I imagine the client on the other side of the room, and they point at me and they go, "Oh, there's Megan, she's the cheapest." That's what I imagine in my head whenever I start doubting myself. Ew. Like, who wants to be the cheapest? That doesn't mean you have to be the most expensive, but, lowering your rates just to kind of, get clients' attention or beat your competition, it's a very, very, very slippery slope. I do not recommend it. If that means that you're walking away from business, from clients that, don't want to pay you or can't pay you what you're asking, it's okay to walk away from business. I walked away from business this week. They wouldn't even pay half of what I was asking. I was like, bye. Let's see here. Otto, if you meant to drop a link, I'm not seeing it in the chat. Here's another one about AI. If you look closely at Google's newest updates, people writing for people, it takes on a bit more of a meaning for SEO. Yep. We were talking about getting your clients on monthly plans. Retainers are my favorite types of contracts. I'm paid no matter what. I've always been a little hesitant with retainers because I do have some clients, like communication isn't great. So sometimes I'll be emailing them repeatedly. Where are my topics? Where's the work? Do you want me to give you topics? And the communication just isn't great. And if they don't give me work, I don't get paid. Fortunately, they're the exception to the rule. But I've wondered about, starting to put my clients on retainers regularly. And I'm just always worried. Like, if you have a contract, you're fine. But I'm still so paranoid that if I do that, one of these clients who's not great at communicating, they're going to go a full month without giving me anything. And then I'm going to charge them. And they're going to be like, well, why are you charging us? You didn't do any work. Like, that's what retainers are for. But I don't know. Maybe you can follow up in the comments and tell me if you've ever had that happen. That's what retainers are, though. So I guess if they drop the ball on that, that's on them, not me. I'm going to put this up here just because it's good for my ego. Thank you. um, let's see. I think hold on, he sent me the chat or the link in a different chat. Hold on one second. Okay. Use this wisely. I'm not encouraging the use of this. Okay. I have not seen this. Well, I've seen something similar. I think we were playing around with something where you could enter a prompt and it would show you AI generated images. Like, it wasn't creating the image on the spot, but it had like a library of images. I don't remember the name, but yeah, images are another one. AI is not just text. You've seen before, like what was that app that went viral recently, and it was turning people into like animated characters, and it made all of us look super hot. There are, issues of ethics and legalities with that as well, because how does AI learn? From combing the internet. And there were a few instances, and I don't know if it's legit or if it was just a coincidence, but I did see a few stories pop up where someone would take an AI generated image, and it was an artist, and the artist would post their image side by side, and they'd say like, AI stole my art. Who knows? But I believe it's possible. So I know if that was my work that was used and just kind of, tweaked a little bit, I probably wouldn't like it. And I know anyone can copy anyone's work. But the fact that there's this tool now that can do it so quickly and pass it off so easily is scary. My friend, you spent some time on my YouTube channel. All my videos are about that. That's a huge question. A very good question. You got to first figure out what service you want to sell and create a portfolio. I've got a few videos that are all about how to start freelancing. So if you go search for those on my channel, you'll see them. Just catching up. Oh, here's a good one. How many niches is too many? I used to say niche, but you guys broke me, so now I say niche. Well, the purpose of a niche is to be able to learn it well enough that you can call yourself, an expert or close to an expert or an authority. And, by definition, we can't do that with everything. I would say, and this will vary depending on what the individual niches are, I would say you could probably get away with 3 broad niches, keeping in mind that within each niche, there are usually tons of sub-niches. So as an example, my main focus with my freelance writing is health and wellness, which is super broad. And 9 times out of 10, that gives me more than enough breathing room, because that can mean supplements, that can mean skincare products, that can mean cannabis. And I try different sub niches within it Some are great and I double down on them, and some aren't and I discard them. But I also write pretty regularly about digital marketing topics. Digital marketing was something I had to learn just from building my own business. And also, my background as a writer, writing and marketing very often work, parallel to each other. So that just kind of happened as a byproduct of growing as a writer and growing this business. Digital marketing is also very broad. I can say that I very comfortably handle those two. And Charisse, especially for a writer of your experience level, I think you could easily do, three and be fine. I know a lot of, and I get why people argue this. A lot of people say the more you niche down, the better, the more specific you get. I could see that for sure. For me personally, I've tested both approaches. I do think you need a niche, but in my experience, keeping it broad has actually been a lot better. If I noticed one day that I found something even more specific that was really, really lucrative, I'd be open to it, but that just hasn't been the case for me. So that's why I keep it broad, and I do have a few niches. If you are just starting out, if someone's on this live stream is very new to freelancing, pick one broad niche to start. Because if you try to do more than that, you're going to get completely overwhelmed, and it's also going to be a lot harder to figure out what works because you're going to be spread so thin, you're not going to be able to find any patterns. To give you an example of what not to do, one of the first types of businesses I went after within health and wellness was gyms. Bad for me. I closed a few gyms, but they were mostly referrals. I knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. I learned gyms just aren't lucrative. They're not paying writers, what I'm charging to write blogs. So that's one sub niche that I don't go after anymore. But I learned that after trying it over and over again. And then I found the pattern. Okay, these people aren't going to pay me. Yes. This brings up a good reminder to never, I know we're human, but to try not to get to that point where you feel desperate. Admittedly, I struggle with this myself, but this is a great reminder. There are lots of companies out there who will pay you what you want. Sometimes it might be harder to find them. Sometimes you might have to be a little more patient. I was just telling, in fact, he's on this call right now. One of my students, Aaron, we were talking about this. We were talking about sourcing bigger companies to see if he finds more success there. And I told him in our private Facebook group, I said, you might have to be a little more patient. That's normal. The bigger the company is, typically, the longer it takes to kind of track down the right person that you need. And especially, don't know if you've heard, but the economy is kind of crap right now. So people are cutting budgets, they're cutting staff. So things are slower right now, but it's still there. Just takes a little more time and a little more elbow grease. Great question. Tangential to not being the cheapest. How do you know when it makes sense to raise your rates based on performance, expertise, yada, yada, yada? So it's kind of a rule of thumb. You should, I think it's like standard to raise your rates a little bit once a year. Now, if you're doing that, and I'm trying to put myself in these shoes because I messed that up and I didn't raise my rates every year. So then when I did raise my rates, I was like, oh, I need to raise my rates a lot. If you're doing that consistently every year, then that should be enough. I will say though that especially if you're kind of newer into your career and the learning curve, there's still a steep learning curve. In the beginning, you're going to learn a ton. And then as you build your business, the learning slows down just because you're becoming more experienced. Everything isn't so fresh and new to you. But that being said, as you kind of grow a proven track record, that's also something to keep in mind in regards to raising your rates. This will make more sense if I give an example. So Um, and this, I'm hesitant to even call this out because it will probably happen very naturally. It's not going to be something you have to force. But at this point, I have a proven track record of getting my clients on page one of Google. I never guarantee it because you can't, but I have many examples now of having done that. So it's no longer me just telling people, well, I'm going to try to get you on page one. I've done this several times and I give them examples. Um, when you have that like proof like that, you can charge a lot more. Another example, one of my students, he's a graphic designer. He's worked with some really big names. So he charges a lot, as he should, like celebrities he's worked with. So you've got the goods to back it up, charge for it. I hope that helps. Rates are always difficult. They're difficult to figure out and they're difficult to talk about because they're so unique to the individual. But at a bare minimum, raise your rates once a year. Someone else saying, I like retainers as well. Yep. Okay, this makes me feel better. I might have to reconsider that. Maybe putting them on a retainer will kind of light a fire under their butt. Was this, I think you put this in the chat when we were talking about the AI that makes images. That might have been it. Was that the one we were trying to find designs for tattoos? I think so. Oh. You can also check with ChatZero to detect AI written content. The developer's been working on making it better since like December. There you go. Yeah, I would be way too scared to use it. Lenza, that's the one that's turning all of us into animations, cartoon characters, whatever you call it. Yeah. Otto made a bunch of them for me. Because that thing was like, you had to pay like $8 for that app. And I was like, I refuse. I'm not a sheep. So he did it. And he made a bunch and it gives you like 200 images. And he came into my office and I was like, I don't want to see him. He was like, just look. So I looked and I was like, I look good. LinkedIn, 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 LinkedIn. That's why LinkedIn is a huge part of my program because every time, and I test this periodically, LinkedIn has been my biggest source of clients for the last several years now. So that's what, when students join me, that's what we focus on. It's certainly not the only way, but I'll argue it's the best way, personally. I've tried cold calling, I've tried Facebook ads, I've tried door to door, job boards, bidding sites, Facebook groups. How I've landed on LinkedIn was that it consistently gives me the best results. It's more manual, but that approach works better. So that's what I'm always telling my students. Like it takes longer. But we're talking about building a business that's going to be, ideally supporting you for a long time. It's worth that investment of your time, especially for the payoff that you get. So I would definitely recommend LinkedIn. And I've got tons of videos on my channel if you need some direction with that. Or you can just message me on Instagram. I know we're chatting there. And case in point, why isn't this thing working? There you go. Got my biggest client because of my profile. I'm so happy to hear that. Good for you. Well deserved. You are a machine. You write more. Yeah. I thought I wrote more than anyone. You write more than me. Oh, this is interesting. AI is by definition an imitation of human art and behavior. It's an atrocity. Yeah. Yeah, it's freaky. It's one of those things that's like, it's cool if you're just using it for funsies, but when it starts replacing people, or when we think it can start replacing people, that's where, honestly, to me, it's a little scary. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it might be dramatic to say we're trying to play God. Hopefully you know what I mean when I say that. It's just crossing the boundaries or blurring the boundaries a little more than I'm comfortable with. And I'm all for using technology to make our lives easier. But there are limits to that, in my opinion. So great follow-up question talking about sourcing bigger company leads from bigger companies. Is there a sweet spot for the employee size we should go after at this state of the world? Meaning the economy's not pretty. Um, I would say, is there a specific number I can give you? No. What I would say is that if what you're doing right now isn't working, go to bigger companies. Um, This is generally something you might want to test out, but I still believe there's a point when a company gets so big that it's really, really, really hard to track down the person that you need. Especially if you're talking with about like a global company, a remote global company. Um, if a company's got thousands of people, I'm not saying it's not worth going after, but I wouldn't rely solely on companies that big. So my students and I, we use LinkedIn's filters. You can filter companies based on the employee size. And I forget the exact ranges, but it's like 0 to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 500, something like that. Spread your sourcing out and go a little bigger than whatever you're currently doing. Keeping in mind, it might take a little bit longer to see results because you're going after a bigger fish. That's okay. But I would go up in size, play around with those filters, and Aaron, probably add this into your spreadsheet. You can either color code it or just make a note of the filter that you used for that specific lead. And again, we're looking for patterns. So if you find that you start having really good luck with companies that are about 500 people or 1,000 people, that's something to take note of because then you're able to refine your search and start going after that size company. That's just one of those things that really takes testing. In a normal world, before everything, the wheels kind of fell off, I stuck with slightly smaller companies, and that's what I always recommended to my students because that's where I saw the most traction. When I went to bigger companies, it was just like a black hole of people. I could never get a hold of the right person. But I think with the economy right now being what it is, and mass layoffs, we might have to go a little bigger and see what happens. That's what I've been doing. Yes. I love it. I think you're talking about AI here. Yeah, I'd be super careful with that, especially if you're doing it for your clients on their social media pages. If you do something that somehow gets flagged for plagiarism or whatever and their account gets banned, um, that's scary. So, yeah, just going back to what we were saying earlier, like I have not used AI for any of my clients. I haven't even used it for myself. I played around with it. That's as far as it got, and I have no intentions of using it for anybody. I do, on a or somewhat related note, I do think it can be good for writer's block, under the assumption that you take what it gave you and you use it as inspiration, but then make it your own. Um, I do like it for that. We can use it as a tool, but not a replacement. This is interesting. Getty has banned the sale of AI generative. That's, you know what? I agree with this completely, but it is an interesting argument because, going like my husband, he was saying, and he made a very fair point. He was like, nothing online is original anyway, so who cares? And he wasn't saying he doesn't care. We were having like a debate about this. And he said that, and I was like, that's a good point. But it's still like the whole concept makes me feel icky. That, as an example, there are people out there, artists creating things by hand or even digitally, but they're doing it themselves, photographers. And to think that they could so easily be replaced like that by work that's not genuine or authentic, I don't like it. And I don't think it's right. And I think that's going to get out of hand, like in a bad way. Like this is technology. I just don't think we're prepared for it personally. I think it's bigger than we're treating it. And it's kind of like social media. If you use it in a positive like in a good way, I think it could be great. But I also think there's another side to it that isn't so good. Yes. Yep. And just test the different ranges that LinkedIn gives you. And actually, if you want to write this down, I'll tell you right now where to go. So, how I do this, one of the things my students and I do, you go on LinkedIn and search your niche. So, let's say your niche is health. So, you're going to type health onto LinkedIn. And then you're going to filter those results by companies. That's one of the main filters at the top of the screen. From there, you're going to see another filter called company size. If you click on that, it lets you filter the results. And some of the ranges are 1 to 10 employees, 11 to 50, 51 to 200, and so on. Play around with these, test different ones. You can check off the ones you want to test. And that's what you're going to want to start keeping track of and start looking for patterns. And you can do this with a free LinkedIn profile for anyone who wants to go try it. Another great point. Why did we become writers if we were just going to use AI? Why become a graphic designer if you're just going to use AI? I agree with you. Some people would argue, well, I can make money without doing the work. It's like, if you want to make money without doing the work, then don't get into a field that requires you to work. I don't know. Or go marry rich. Go marry a rich old guy. He'll take care of you. But like, just leave us alone. Great question. If I've branded myself a certain way on LinkedIn, how do I go about pivoting my brand to my freelance venture? So I'm a big fan of doing it in steps. So let's say, and I'm making this up. This is like a hypothetical example. Let's say you are an electrician and you decide you want to get into freelance graphic design, two very different fields. Personally, it's my opinion, I would not switch, update your profile in one fell swoop. I would kind of like incorporate the two, which I know might sound awkward because they have nothing to do with each other, but there are ways to kind of segue, one from one to the other. Like, for example, you could say, let's say you're an electrician, you're getting into graphic design. You could say something like, my work requires me to be creative and come up with creative solutions. And that's the aspect of this job that I enjoy most. I'm now taking those skills that career path gave me and applying them to the field of graphic design. I know it's like we had to massage it a lot to get there, but that is what I would do. And then the posts you share on LinkedIn, start switching those over, transitioning to something new. And then eventually, like if you're ready to let go of that previous job, then you switch over completely. Or if you want both, there are ways to balance out both. I know some people will disagree with that. Some people will say just make the switch and call it a day. But usually, people that I'm working with, when they come to me with that question, it's because they still have a full-time job or a part-time job and they can't leave it yet. So, but they also want to start putting out there that they're freelancing. So we usually find something in the middle. And then once they're freelancing full-time, we get rid of the rest on their profile. I hope that makes sense. Hello, Neo. Oh, that was my old dog's name. I love that. The practical steps to acquire clients. Go back to my YouTube channel. My whole channel is about that. That's what my whole program is about. LinkedIn, pick a niche, build a portfolio. That's the very basic foundation. You're welcome, Charisse. Perfect, Adam. Okay, so on my end, it's looking like I'm caught up on questions, but if I'm not, holler. Drop another comment if I forgot you, because I don't want to miss anyone, and I'm still gonna. We've got another 5 minutes or so until I'm gonna hop off here. So, any questions I missed or any last minute questions? Now's the time. I'm just gonna sit here and be weird again. This was fun. We had a good turnout. I hope this was helpful. I know the hour always goes by very quickly. Um, but I love going live. I kind of want to do it a little bit more. And it's such a good opportunity to meet people. You know what I noticed? Um, like I'm very active online. I post YouTube videos every week. I'm very active on LinkedIn. But, you know, it's hard to trust strangers on the internet, especially when they have an online course like I do, because you're always wondering like what are their motives really? And I noticed the last time I did a live stream, a couple people that were on it messaged me on LinkedIn after and they were like, "You're real." I said, "Yeah, I'm real." And they felt it was nice that I came on here just to kind of like shoot the breeze and answer questions. And it's always good to see the person behind the social media posts, because I know there are a lot of people out there faking it, especially people who have something to sell you. So it's always good to connect with everybody. Um yeah, this was fun. We should do this again sometime. I'd love it. If you guys are okay with the time, it's just really hard to stop and do these in the middle of the workday. I really can't. But you know, I know the evening time isn't like super optimal, but if everyone's okay with that, and these recordings stay up, so this will be on my channel indefinitely, so anyone can watch the recording. Um, but I love doing these, and I specifically did it on YouTube because anyone can watch this. I do go live on LinkedIn sometimes, but it's like if you're not active on LinkedIn, you're not going to see it. I figured YouTube's a little more accessible because anyone can access it. Going live is fun. Yep. Karina says, so helpful. Yes, and it was fun too. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm so glad we were able to connect. I got in a bit late. Will you do another Q&A? Yes. Evenings are generally easier for me, so I can do that. Adam says, yes, you do message back and you are real. I was pleasantly surprised. I know. I know. It's fun. I actually had someone say to me one time, and they didn't mean it in any sort of way. They were just, I think they were surprised. We were messaging on LinkedIn and they were like, "Oh my God, you're really nice." I was like, "Yeah." You're welcome, Daniel. Mustufa. I hope I'm saying your name right. That's how I always say it in my head. So it's good to see you here. No, I will not live stream on Mondays. You have I promise. Awesome. So glad to hear that. I can't do Mondays or Tuesdays. Okay. I won't stream on Tuesdays. This was great. I learned a ton. Thank you. Thank you, Charisse. One of the best writers I know and one of the kindest. Man, you better be careful with all these compliments. No, I'm AI. All right. We are it's about that time. So I think I'll call it here. No one else has submitted any questions. Thank you for all the kind words of affirmation. I appreciate it. Thank you for bearing with me with that little technical glitch earlier. I will not use this microphone anymore. But yeah, you guys know how to get a hold of me. You can drop comments on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all the places. So reach out anytime. I love hearing from you. And oh my God, you guys stop. Okay, my head's gonna get way too big, so I'm gonna end this stream. But thanks for giving me some of your time. Your time is your most valuable asset, and I never forget that. So thank you, and reach out anytime, and have a good weekend.